Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for the Orns 10-minute take on Huddersfield Town 0, Watford 2. The Golden Boys get back to winning ways after a two-match winless streak as Watford successfully do what they came to Huddersfield Town to do on Humberside, and that was to get 3 points. Watford started the game well, defending for the most part. It's not that they started poorly, they didn't start necessarily on the front foot, but they were very clear that this game was to come from the way they defended, and the defending set the template for the way the game would unfold. Watford defended very well in the first half hour of this game, and Huddersfield Town, bottom of the table coming into the game, had a few forays, nothing really threatening, but they did make runs and they were very busy for much of the first half of the first half. In fact, just about half an hour of the first half, they did have a lot of activity going on and they did make some forays into Watford's box. It wasn't until Watford, maybe about 5 to 10 minutes before the end of the half, began to make some inroads. Watford began to push and probe the defense of Huddersfield Town and breached that back line a couple of times, only for João Pedro to agonizingly miss a sitter that went just past the post. And Keenan Davis, a few minutes later, just before the stroke of halftime, had a good chance, but he did not get his shot to stay curved to the bottom or top left-hand corner of the net. And as a result of that, it was going to be a 0-0 game, which it was at halftime. But Watford, really hard done by, I think. A bit unlucky not to have gone in with at least a 2-0 lead at halftime. And Huddersfield Town very much the more relieved side at that point. But the second half, it became a different affair altogether. Watford took this game by the scruff of its neck. Just 9 minutes after the restart, João Pedro getting his 7th goal of the season to give Watford the priceless, all-important 1-0 lead. And the thing about this performance that I really enjoyed is that Watford did not sit on the 1-0 lead. So often this season, we've seen how Watford, and in other seasons prior to this, have been only too content to sit on a 1-0 lead and defend out the entire rest of the game. That is never a good practice, and a lot of times you cannot get away with it. Even if you get away with it, sometimes it is not the best strategy. And Watford absolutely ditched that strategy and kept going in search of a second goal, which they would get late on around, what was it, the 84th minute, whenever it was, that João Pedro struck to make it a 2-0 game, 2 for João Pedro, 2 for Watford, 8 on the season for João Pedro. And that really was all she wrote as far as Huddersfield Town were concerned. Watford controlled the game. Huddersfield Town never really looked like scoring in this game. There was some frustration with the crowd. They were not happy with the way the referee was doing things. And certainly the Huddersfield Town fans, I think in some cases, had some complaints and some rightful complaints. But there was definitely a place where Watford fans should have complained, and I'm sure they did, because there was a penalty shout that I think should have been given. Keenan Davis pushed down in the box, and I think he should absolutely have scored, or at least been given a penalty, which I would imagine he probably would have scored from, but we'll never know now, as the referee declined the penalty. I thought the referee, and what else is new, was an absolute shambles today on both ends for both teams. And I think that Watford, at least now, having gone the business and got it done, can now move on. But this was not the game I thought that the referee should have been dealing with in this manner. But this was down to Watford's pressure, and two of the players who made a big impact, apart from the obvious man of the match, João Pedro, were in midfield. Tom Dele-Bashiru, his second consecutive Watford start of the season, and the man who made his debut for Watford today, Leandro Bacuna. I think both of those players were the excellent midfield glue that held this game together. Very rarely in the second half did the Huddersfield hometowns team turn over the, force Watford out of that midfield and get the ball from them. Very, very rare. I think maybe twice in that entire second half did I see that midfield tilt slightly for Huddersfield, and that may have been too many, because I don't think that it really happened. But Watford, I thought, got the balance right in midfield throughout most of this match, especially in the second half. Tom Dele-Bashiru has been outstanding, lights out. He's been excellent since he's come back into this Watford side. It's going to be very, very difficult to dislodge him if he continues to play like this. no matter what the story is on players who may be coming back in a couple of months. And now this is Tom Deli Bashiru's position in midfield to lose, because he'll have at least the next 2 months to show everybody what he's all about. The Tom Deli Bashiru that we know is an absolute class player. And I expect that you'll see more of this from him. His performances have been excellent last week against Hull, and then again today against Huddersfield. So Watford get the win. And Leandro Bacuna, who hadn't played championship football for at least a year, if not longer, and who had only just joined Watford 2 or 3 days ago, he made an excellent impression on his Watford debut. He is a really very shrewd and persistent midfielder. He's a veteran player at this point in his career. He's from the Curacao Islands, from Curacao. He's someone who is very dedicated to what he does. He has a very good, solid template and game plan for how he's going to marshal the midfield. And his passing today was sublime. Thought that there was so much confidence in what he was doing. I love the way that he passed the ball and passed it into good areas of the pitch to move the play forward. He was a very good orchestrator and marshaller of that midfield along with TDB. And I love the way both of them passed, but Bacuna was brilliant at it. And he really didn't put a foot wrong the entire match. And mind you, he was in there for just over 60 minutes. And the plan was to curtail his minutes to around 60 odd, because again, he'd not been in the championship for a long while. And also he had, just joined Watford literally 2 or 3 days ago. So look, Bacuna should be very proud of himself, and Watford fans should be very proud of him. He did a magnificent job today. Love the way he stretched out the play. Love the way that he advanced the play. I like the way that he knew when to pass the ball, when not to. I loved how he wasn't stationary. And when he ever was stationary, he made sure that the ball was going to reach the man. His passing today was very good. And again, he advanced the play very well. I like the way that he led the line at times in the midfield. I like the way he came forward in the midfield at times. He did all the dirty work, did the tackles that Hamza Chowdhury would ordinarily do. He tracked back. He did all these things that midfield players have to do as well. And he got the balance right as far as the midfield was concerned. And he really was the star of the show. Both he and TDB were an excellent tandem today. And I look forward to seeing more of them, and also against tougher opposition, because Millwall, I think, you'd have to say, coming up on Boxing Day, would be tougher opposition. Certainly, Watford have found that out already this season, and to their cost, with Imran Loser out, and he still is out and expected to be back in February sometime at the earliest. As far as Watford go, they did themselves the power of good today, the world of good, getting 3 points out of this game. They were third coming into the games between Norwich City, the one game between Norwich and Blackburn. But after that game was over with, Blackburn winning 2-0, Watford actually dropped to fourth. So net, Watford only gained one place out of this win, because they started the day in fifth, jumped up to third. And then, of course, the game between Norwich and Blackburn was the game that we were hoping that would finish in a draw. It did not. And so Blackburn, because they won, moved back into third place. Watford fall down a place to fourth. Now, Watford are on 37 points. They are now 10 points still behind Burnley, who won again. They came from behind to do so. And Sheffield United, who are on 41 points, are scheduled to play on Monday night at Wigan. We'll see if that game goes forward or not. But anyway, the bottom line is Watford really got the balance right. The defending set the template of this game, sent the atmosphere of this game to be a very patient, stalwart Watford defense. It was great, stalwart defensively, and they really did build a base from the defense to go forward and push and get goals. And that's how they fortified it today. Watford, I think, have a very, very good nucleus at the moment. They've won this game today. They've kept 4 consecutive clean sheets. Remember that in the entire Premier League season last season, Watford kept 4 clean sheets. The entire season. I can count them right off the top of my head. 0-0 against Manchester United, 1-0 against Aston Villa at their place, 0-0 against Burnley, and 0-0 against Everton at Vicarage Road. I can count them, all 4 of those off the top of my head. That was all last season. And that was one season in the Premier League where there were 4 clean sheets. Now, we've gone through exactly half a championship season, and Watford already have 4 consecutive clean sheets right now. This is the 4th of them today against Huddersfield. So Watford defensively have set out a stall, very much so, very much cemented, and regimented and disciplined. We saw that today from the tandem of Cavaselli and Cathcart. You almost didn't notice either of them today because they were that good defensively. And I thought that Julian Dix, of course, he's come in as a defensive coach. He certainly will, I think, bolster what Watford have. But I think the bottom line is here is you got out of the place with 3 points. You head back down to Watford on Boxing Day. You'll be taking on Millwall. Of course, Millwall are the team we need to pay back for the horrendous performance that we gave in a Wednesday midweek game just a couple of months ago. I tell you, that was the low point of the season for Watford. Dreadful, dreadful, dreadful. Watford have a chance now to avenge that defeat on Boxing Day at the Vic. This has been the Orns Saturday Focus. 10-minute take. 10-minute take.